Need one more mic because we've been told to, embrace.
Are
so
you
we're
kidding
not getting
me?
back up there on
First
that table.
you bring up Julian, and then, are you kidding? What? And then with these two over here? What? I don't know how you can follow that, but I'm going to try my best.
So yes, you already know Joe. It seems pretty clear. This is Joe Schwinger from MeetingPlay, and when I asked him how he would like me to introduce him, what kind of title, he said, I don't like titles. So as the founder and chief strategist of MeetingPlay.
Not well. Go ahead.
Yes, I think you're going to be perfectly positioned to answer these questions today. We've already mentioned that engagement for online events comes up time and time again in our research as the #1 challenge for planners. This surely has a huge impact on the ROI of organizers and sponsors. Why are the reasons that this is so challenging?
Okay. I swear I didn't know she was going to ask that question, but can we throw the slide up real quick? All right, so every interview I've done for like 3 months now, it starts with that question. And if you ask, Julius was asked that question, I'm asked that question, Will's asked that. Everybody has a different definition of engagement. And one of the things that has become really clear to me, I love this part, right? But one of the things that's become very clear to me as I've been interviewing attendees is engagement means something different to everybody. They own it, right? And something happened here that I threw up 2 weeks ago that to me, this attendee, okay, he decided he was going to write an article on Medium about his experience at a virtual event. By the way, it was hybrid, okay? But he, in my opinion, defined his engagement. And what he said was, I'm not the person to go into a room of 5,000 and, socialize like this. I'm the kind of person that likes to sit into the back, and it was really nervous for me to have those experiences. And what he said was, he felt the emotion and he felt the vibe of what was going on property. So there were 3,000 people on property and about 25,000 people virtually. And by the way, they did an amazing job of pulling all this together. But to me, this guy, we defined engagement for him, okay? And then another experience that I would bring up is 2 months ago, we worked with Marriott to bring 1,000 to 1,500 people together, all together. But there were people that, because of travel bans and their corporate restrictions, could not be there. And when you looked at the chat during the keynote, that Marriott invested heavily in that message, right? So when you talk about ROI, what the attendees were saying, their definition of engagement was, you gave me a choice this time, and if I didn't have that choice, I would have missed out on your message. And if you went to Tony and Stephanie, who lead Marriott, and say, hey, would you consider these 700 people watching increasing your ROI? Well, I think that they would say yes. So what I would leave you with is we and the attendees have their own version of what engagement is to them. And giving them choice and giving them an opportunity will allow them to find their way. When the pandemic hit in March of last year, all we did at MeetingPlay with some Liz and everybody else was education, right? And everybody was chasing this holy grail of, I just want to engage people, right? And what happened naturally over a couple months is everybody found what their definition of what engagement was, and we figured it out, right? And I will go to something that Julius said before he left is, let's not forget how all of you in this room went from Blockbuster to Netflix, okay? Do not go back to Blockbuster, okay? Take those learnings of how you re-imaged yourself and how you thought about engagement and bring them into the experiences moving forward.
Okay, so what Can you give us some examples of what it really takes to engage an online audience?
Yeah. So going back to, one small thing, right? Like, probably half of you people have never heard of MeetingPlay, and by the way, that's by design. We do not put our logo on anything that we do for our customers. We're a white label product behind the scenes. So I'll use an example of VMware, kind of like our Dell friends. VMware has a conference where they bring together all of their research analysts, engineers, 15,000 people globally, to come up with what is the roadmap for the company for 5 years, okay? How do you do that in a virtual environment and make it sticky? So here we stepped back and said, all right, let's look at the attendee, okay? What are they trying, what makes them excited and gets up every day and really wants to come and do something, whether it be in person or virtually? And there what we did was, you know what? Everybody's talking about IPOs and everything that's going on in technology. What if we turn this white paper research into a Shark Tank? And every attendee is going to get $5,000. They were tokens. They weren't dollars, okay? And we encourage them through our networking algorithm to match them with things that would be of interest to them. But we ask them to invest VMware's dollars that we gave you into what that next is going to be. And then we took it a little bit further, and we took the top 16, and we did like an NCAA bracket where we brought in live head-to-head, where the people that were investing were like, I want that lady, I want that girl to win, because that's the big idea that I invested in. So what we did was we stepped back and we took a look at the attendees and said, what is going to get them excited? What's going to make them want to come on day 3 as opposed to day 1 and not come back on day 2? So that's a key component that I would say.
It's really interesting. I'd love to know more about your networking algorithm, if you can share.
I don't know if we have. So again, going back to where we started in the pandemic. Actually, can we just go to the next slide? I'll talk about this a little bit. So kind of what I was just saying, right, in terms of how expectations as planners, how you all have transformed into tech-savvy, planners that are on the cusp of networking and all these other things, right? One of the beauties of, Julius at Hopin and SwapCard and everything else is the industry has moved so fast in 2 years. MeetingPlay started 10 years ago, before Facebook was outside of colleges. And the biggest round of funding was Double Dutch. And I think it was like 43 million. Everybody remember Double Dutch?
Yes.
Everybody talks about, oh my God, they got 43 million. Now, if you're raising $43 million, you're behind, right? So what has happened in the last 2 years is really a whole new tool set for everybody in this room. And hopefully you'll use that to your advantage. But to go directly answer your question, one of the things that I think has dramatically moved us forward is machine learning and artificial intelligence. We've actually moved now, going back to that data question, it used to be that you would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on session tracking and iBeacons and all this stuff on property to know where people are going. And now we get that as an added benefit in a hybrid environment, right? And machine learning is taking that and saying, well, if Sharon went to these 3 sessions over here and she kind of moved in the direction of liking comedies instead of murder mysteries, let's start showing her some comedies.
So then you know about her.
Oh, yes, we do. And that, I was in the back of the room when that question was asked, how many of you are actually using your data? And quite frankly, I would tell you that this is actually the biggest change that we've seen in the year-over-year component of the customers that we work with. The VMwares, the Databricks, Oktas of the world are using this data. And what they're doing is they're pulling out a lot of good nuggets. And as a result, and I'm sure everybody here knows, all of our events have kind of moved up the funnel a little bit when it comes to marketing, right? From my perspective, FYI, my customer prior to the pandemic was always the meeting planner. and always had a set budget. But how many of you meeting planners in the room now have the CMOs that are saying, you need a little bit more money to make this work a little bit better, to get people to stay on the platform a little bit longer? I could tell you probably 1/3 of our customers are in that boat.
That's a good boat to be in,
Oh, yeah.
I should say.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, next question. How important is the production value in terms of the video feed and the design of the platform itself?
So actually, I go either way on this, right? So I would agree, and as everybody else in this room would agree, that if you don't have a good production value going into your event, then you're kind of doomed, right? Like, part of the beauty of the hybrid that we're seeing right now is the releasing of on-demand and the virtual, so people can consume and have really good content, and then bringing live on property and supplement that for online. Great production is an absolute must. However, one of the things that we're seeing that personally I think is pretty cool is actually low production value, what we've been accustomed to in the virtual environments, AKA the speakers going live after their pre-recorded content to ask questions. We're actually bringing those tools on property, right? So one of the biggest headwinds that all of us had in this room when virtual first hit were sponsors. I hate it. I hate the virtual environment. I can't be face-to-face. And now when we go to our sponsors to say, oh, we're moving you back on property. So the 50,000 people that you were getting to talk to virtually is now only 2,000 of those people. So this is where low production value is actually coming in. So on our mobile app, we have a Go Live feature, and our sponsors are using it in really creative ways. They're basically live streaming from their booths in a low production environment and taking advantage of the 50,000 people that are watching virtually as opposed to the 3,000 people that are there. And KubeCon is a great example. So here's the other myth that I like to debunk with everybody is, again, very early on, there was this general consensus that virtual, I'm losing money on virtual. I'm working twice as hard, and there's no ROI. I can tell you 90% of the hybrid events that MeetingPlay is working with our planners are highly profitable because they are charging, in a large trade show environment, they're charging respectfully for on-property, but they're also charging virtually. And when you bring those tools together, they're basically almost doubling their sponsorship money successfully.
Okay. You mentioned here authenticity. Can we talk about that? I think that word means very different things to different people.
Yeah.
How do you define that?
Well, I don't think that anybody likes to spend 60 minutes watching something that doesn't feel authentic. And part of the best virtual environments or hybrid environments that we've done, and actually, I'll use that hybrid example from Marriott. It kicked off with authentic people talking about getting the industry back together, okay? And when you look at the session scores and when you look at the responses, there's a different emotion that comes out because of the authentic message that's being displayed. Versus, we all have customers like this, right? We've got some tech customers that have a canned message, right, that they need to get out there. And we see much lower engagement. So again, another positive that we like to bring is you may need to cross all the dots on some pre-canned content, but bring some authentic messaging to the table.
Okay, and lastly, what about after the event ends? Are there ways to continue to create value for the attendees?
Isn't that the million-dollar question that we're all trying to answer? I'm sure Liz has got a million of these. So I think this is where we were in March of last year, where people, us meeting planners and event technology companies, all have an idea on how we can bring post-event engagement to the table. I'm sure you'll probably hear the word community 5 million times, 5 trillion times. I think the verdict is out though, right? When we talk about associations that thrive on bringing membership together and a constant message, then that message can live on, and I think there's going to be a lot of success there. When we surveyed attendees and our customers that gave us that access, what we heard loud and clear from our attendees and internally, we're kind of calling this the mom test, right? Like, MeetingPlay grew to 100 people overnight, basically. And we grew nationwide, and we took advantage of everybody. And when we asked our internal employees, how do you feel about coming back to the office? Loud and clear, it was like, sure, I'll come for a CKO, but that's about it. And what we're hearing from attendees is, sure, I'll come for your annual event, and I'll be excited to be there, but don't expect me now in this hybrid environment to be there 4 times a year, 3 times a year. So what we have to figure out as an industry now is how do we balance all of that together through all of the challenges that we've seen over the last 18 months.
Lot of change.
Yeah, a lot of change coming.
Yep.